Good afternoon, everyone. Come on in, have a seat, a virtual seat. We'll get started here shortly as people are still joining. My name is Reggie Hammond, and I'm managing partner for Your Crescendo. And we have been facilitating and managing a series of webinars to help build awareness amongst stakeholders for the Metro Atlanta Land Bank. Today we have another exciting Lunch and Learn webinar topic, the fifth in a series. We've been really encouraged by the interest and feedback of this series, and so we're eager to bring you the topic we have planned today. Today's webinar will be on doing business with the Metro Atlanta Land Bank, and it will be presented by none other than the Executive Director for the Land Bank, Chris Norman. Chris, turn it over to you. Take it away, sir.
Thank you, Reggie. We appreciate your help and all the assistance you have provided up to this point. And welcome everybody who has decided to join us for a little lunch and learn today. So today, we have covered a series of topics beginning this year, everything from about the land bank and how to acquire property and do all other sorts of things. And so now we decide to kind of talk to you a little bit about, how do you do business with the land bank as a vendor? So a little different from you're doing business with us as a developer, but as a vendor. So we're going to dive right in. And so hope you have your sandwich and beverage ready. And just format wise, just as we get going, just let everybody know that we will pause for questions at the end. It will take about up to 30 minutes to go through this presentation. Then we'll open the floor for questions and have some Q&A. So we're going to go ahead and proceed. So I'd like to level set with folks when we get started on these webinars, to just so you understand again, what is a land bank as an entity? A land bank is this public nonprofit entity. In our case, is a public entity that's actually incorporated as a nonprofit, but really focus on acquiring and managing and deal with this vacant, abandoned, and blighted and tax delinquent property that rests within our communities. And that consists of residential properties, and commercial properties, multifamilies, all those types of things are properties that we target to basically work with to bring them back online. And so, we are a tool. I remind people that, we are not the end all be all for all issues of blight and distress, but we are a helpful tool that governments throughout the country use to deal with their distressed, abandoned, vacant property. And as I mentioned before, it's residential, commercial, industrial, but it also does include green space. So we have been involved in projects. Now, a core competency of a land bank, what do we do? What do land banks do? Their core competency is the acquisition and disposition of the land. It is really the whole idea of how do you gain control of property, because that's step one. And then once you have that control of the property, then you can basically convert it to a better use. The one thing we also point out is that we do not have eminent domain authority. So land bank itself, any land bank in Georgia particularly, will not be initiating eminent domain processes on any property owned throughout the state. That still rests with the taxing authorities, your city and your county. They will basically execute that. So, and then finally, we kind of step in where the market has not, so if the market were functionally at optimal capacity, we've cleared all the distressed land, blighted properties, vacant and abandoned, all those things have been absorbed and basically repurposed by the market. So for whatever reason that is not happening, the land bank can get involved to kind of be the initial impetus to get these projects and properties moved on to their next leg. And so let's talk about our land bank, right? So we are we are an entity that's fairly lean. I think people are a little surprised sometimes in terms of figure out, how large is the land bank. But we have basically worked to leverage and create virtual capacity to execute our programs. We have a variety of programs. We've talked about the programs in previous webinars. And again, if you're interested in those, go to our website and look under webinars, and you can view those. But we also, by leveraging these outside entities, we're able to create a much bigger footprint for our organization that allows us to even be more efficient and effective. So let's talk a little bit about, who we are. And so, our mission, straightforward, it's about returning these non-revenue generating and non-tax producing and blighted properties back to effective status. And when we say an effective status, that basically means either the property is going to be now well tended, it's probably going to be occupied, it's going to be generating taxes, it's going to create either affordable housing, market housing, public space like a park, it could be a pocket park, a large park. It could be inviting for a new industry to locate, and then secondarily providing jobs for the citizens, particularly in a commercial enterprise. And one other thing we do that no other entity in the state can do is to extinguish past due tax liens. And that is important because it allows us a clear title for property that's been basically abandoned or distressed. Because when it's abandoned or left alone, the tax bills still come. They just basically accrue and sit there. And so sometimes it's necessary to kind of reboot these properties and clear the taxes. And so your land bank can do that. So our land bank, let's talk a little bit about who we are. So we are an organization that's basically the top of the chart. You have a board of directors. So we have 7 board directors. They are appointed by the city of Atlanta and by Fulton County. There are 4 seats for the city of Atlanta, 3 seats for the Fulton County. We currently have 5 of those seats filled and 2 are in the process of being filled. So we do have an operating quorum for the board and we do meet regularly. Then you have me, so I'm the executive director. So I am the principal of the organization. And so within that, kind of look at the color coding here so you'll understand a little bit about what this chart means. So the blue, the dark blue, the navy boxes, those are actual land bank employees or Metro Atlanta Land Bank employees. So we are full-time folks employed and salaried by Metro Atlanta Land Bank. And so you'll see that there's actually only 6 boxes. But if you look at the screen, it's quite large. And again, this gets to what I'm talking about, virtual capacity. So within this framework, I want to talk a little bit about, where the opportunities come for you to partner with us. And that's the whole point of this webinar. The orange boxes you see, we have legal support from the city of Atlanta and Fulton County. They have attorneys from their respective law departments that are assigned to support us. But for transactional work, we actually depend on outside counsel. So Griffin and Strong, PC is our general counsel. They've actually been our general counsel for over a decade, done a great job supporting us. We've utilized Kutak Rock, which is a large firm here in Atlanta, and they were very helpful with us during the neighborhood stabilization program. They helped multiple municipalities, and they were one that we basically relied on. And then Taylor English Duma, attorney Trey Dye and Reggie Snyder are with them, and they actually help represent us on real estate matters. And so we do not have legal counsel on staff, but we do rely on external counsel to provide support to us. You'll see these other green boxes here, and I'm going to go into broader detail as we flip through the presentation here, but you see, the bookkeepers and of course, IT, like anybody else, will have website support and public relations. And if you start looking at, vacant property manager, property management, and demolition and insurance. So all those things you would think that you would need to run a real estate enterprise, because the land bank, even though it's a quasi-governmental entity, it really has all the trappings of a real estate company. We do everything except for the development phase, which we're legally allowed to do. We just have never really tried to do that type of work. So pointing out, the things we actually need help with as we go from day to day. We have a very capable group of staff here, and we work closely with our partners at Invest Atlanta, the City of Atlanta, Atlanta Housing, the Atlanta Beltline. We work across a wide variety of entities, our nonprofit development partners, our for-profit development partners, community development corporations, Atlanta Land Trust, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But even having said that, we do need support. So let's talk about these areas of support here. So the first, property management professionals. We have inventory that requires maintenance. And so by statute, our property is to be maintained like we would expect any other partner in the community. So we basically enlist outside professionals to do our maintenance of properties. We typically maintain it every 2 weeks. This includes everything from dealing with vacant lots. Of course, this deals with growth and overgrowth, but also dumping. That does happen in Atlanta. If anybody owns property, If it's vacant, there is an opportunity for folks to take advantage of that. And then it also, for structures, it could include things like boarding. It could include things such as repairs to prevent damage inside. Sometimes it actually deals with working with the Atlanta police to basically deal with squatters or people that are basically trespassing on your property. So all those variety of things. Unfortunately, we haven't had a lot of fires, but that would be something else that they would have to deal with. Now you have property insurance. So we are actually, even though the legal name of the land bank is the Fulton County City of Atlanta, and you see an affiliation with the city and the county, we are not municipally insured. So we need our private insurance. So we have property insurance vendors that provide insurance to basically cover all of our inventory. And then as a corporate entity, we also have corporate insurance for us, which includes everything from board of directors insurance to workers' comp to your typical commercial corporate policy. And then our auditors. So we audit our books, and so our annual audits. So that, of course, includes going out and obtaining the services of qualified CPA firms out there that can perform audits. Accountants. So we have a lot of transactional flow. There are a lot of different forms of capital coming in and out of land bank. So therefore, we need an accountant. We have a bookkeeper that helps us to do our monthly reconciliations and closing of the books, and they work with the auditors to make sure we have worked through our audit process. Real estate agents. Every now and then, depending upon the goals of that particular year, we may need to acquire property. And then we also may need to dispose of property. In those cases, we do not rely on the staff to execute those acquisitions or dispositions. We help to coordinate, but we do enlist real estate agents to assist with those issues. Computer systems and IT. Of course, everybody knows the importance of IT. We've all been Zooming for the last 16 months. We're Zooming right now, or Teams or Google Share or whatever platform you're using. We have to have IT. And so we have partners that help us basically coordinate and upgrade and maintain all of our systems as you would with any other corporate entity. For our properties that are basically in distress, that need to be taken down, we also enlist the services of demolition companies to help us. Oftentimes, those are coordinated by the property management professionals that I talked about earlier, but every now and then on a one-off, we will enlist a demolition company to do that solely with the direction of the land bank. And then we also have special purpose consultants, people that help us with things such as like your Crescendo, Reggie Hammond's group, helping us with doing strategic plans, helping us with executing things like webinars, doing graphics for the land bank. We may need specialized studies done. We may need things that are unique and therefore require us to go out and seek the services of consultants that basically have expertise and capabilities that we just don't have internally. So these are all the kind of myriad types of things that we as an entity, an institution, are sometimes find ourselves, needing to bring to the table. So let's talk about how do we procure services, and basically how do we go forward. So, So procurement process, guidelines. So we do have some breakpoints based on contract value relative to which process we use. So if we have a contract of the nominal value that's going to be greater than $5,000, i.e. over the term of this contract, we're going to pay you more than $5,000. It could be paid in a lump sum or over a period of time. We're going to award that via request for proposals, or an RFP, as most people are familiar with the abbreviation, or an RFQ process if we actually bring it in a pool to do that. For contracts that are less than $5,000 but greater than $500, we'll actually get 3 competitive bids. That doesn't necessarily mean we'll do an RFQ process, an RFP or RFQ, but we'll go out and obtain those. And then we typically try to, based on certain categories, reopen those every 2 years to give folks an opportunity to bid on, and then the others, we fill those as the need arises, and we go forward. So I'm going to go forward with a little bit more detail. So let's look at the scenario of the greater than 5,000, right? So you may have, over the period of time, say, hey, I like the land bank. I think it's somebody I would love to do business with. I think it's something that my services could really help them. You can just notify us of your information. We kind of put you into our or database, and then we can basically include you in the notification. And so if you are interested in doing business with the land bank, I suggest you send in your information, a little background about your company. We can just kind of have it on file, even if it's not time to do the particular procurement. Then once we're ready to do the RFP, we go through, we draft this RFP document that includes all the information about, what's required, what we need, the timeline, all those types of things, points of contact, et cetera. And then basically we release that. We're going to release that either via our website. We're going to have other platforms and channels we use. Sometimes we send it to different associations that have affiliations with what we need. We've sometimes used the City of Atlanta and Fulton County's procurement platforms to publish our RFPs. And then the first point, if you send us your contact information to be contacted, we'll also email it to you directly so you can have that for your benefit. Then, of course, the next step in this process is for you to respond to that RFP in accordance with all the information requirements and the timeline that we include in that document. And so, it's just as like any other procurement process. So when we enter into an RFP process, RFQ, we ask that everybody abide by the guidelines laid out there, which is going to mean it's going to regulate how we communicate with everybody, how we talk to folks, how information is shared and questions are answered. But we like to do that to make sure that we are on a clean procurement processes. So once that timeline has run its course, we've gotten in all the packages, the responses, then we basically typically have a panel. The panel could consist of solely land bank staff members. It could include land bank board members. It could also include strategic partners and other panelists that we think might be helpful for the review process. We go through, we score it, we do all those things that are basically required by the RFQ, RFP, and then we say, okay, we have a recommendation either in the RFP, it's going to be a sole awardee. RFQ, there'll probably be a pool of folks that basically make a pool. So we then take that and we move it over to our board. Then the board regularly meets. The board then will basically approve that slate. They may also to object, but it's up to the board. They do have the right to make that final award. And then now that we all have agreed who those parties will be, then we'll move into work with our attorneys, and we'll move to basically agree to contract terms and execute that contract for whatever service might be needed at that time. And so that's how that works with the RFP, RFQ process. So let's look at the instance, and I know questions, we'll answer your questions at the end, so keep them coming. If it's less than 5,000, again, same process. If you think as a result of this webinar or any other word of mouth, or you just kind of see us, you think you want to do business with us, please submit your information to us. You have the information at on our website. You can send it to the info at metroatlantalandbank.org. It will make its way to us. So we have that information, right? So the Metro Atlanta Land Bank, identifying this need for a service, will then go out and solicit, vendors. So we may have this database that we have created by folks like you on this webinar that have submitted your information. We also want to do like all the other people. When you say, hey, I need a service, I'm going to go look for people that are in a certain category and basically identify them and ask them to respond to a bid. And so we go out and we seek multiple bids. We try to have at least 3. We get these detailed bids. We'll kind of lay out the same requirements to everybody else, say this is what we need, and here's the timeline in which we need for you to respond, and folks send it in. At that point, then we will review it. Again, we use a similar process for the RFP, RFQ, except we won't have the formality of the RFP process, but I will look at this in conjunction with staff members, and we may bring in, again, some additional parties that have expertise in whatever we're seeking to help us evaluate. And then once we have determined who we want to do business with, then based on my recommendation and one of the board members, we will actually agree to move forward with that. So again, contracts less than 5,000, greater than 500, it basically is executive director and one board member is involved in that process. And then we again move to executing contract terms and signing contracts for that respective service. So that's how we deal with those contracts. And then as we move down the continuum to smaller contracts and say, okay, this is a service it's not that large, it's gonna be under $500, then basically we're gonna go out and we're gonna identify bids, similar process. How do we originate them? Same thing, you've submitted your name and we identify you. You give us the bid for that. And then that one, basically, I have signature authority for those and I'll go ahead and approve that engagement. And then we'll move forward with the procurement of terms. And so that is the actual formal process for how folks become vendors with the land bank. And so I think one thing you should appreciate is, even though we do allow for you to submit your information, we typically do not do unsolicited engagements with parties seeking to do business with the land bank. There's typically a time frame or process in which we entertain bringing on vendors and partners. So if you contact us and it happens to be in between that window, just be patient with us and just submit in accordance with what you're desiring to do for us, and we will follow up with you when we're ready to work with you. So I do want to point out, there are instances where there are certain parties that have particular expertise or unique qualifications that allow us to do a sole source contract. And that falls into all those categories. So that could be under 500, between 5,000 and 500, or greater than 5,000. So we may find ourselves saying we need somebody who's specialized in a certain type of business, a certain type of intelligence, and therefore we will seek that party out. So therefore we are allowed to do sole source contracts with parties without doing an RFP or any of that. So we do have that. Now I want to point out, if you become a member or a qualified vendor via RFQ, which is request for qualifications, and that means, again, so everybody's clear, a request for qualifications means that we are going out and say, hey, all the people in this universe, in this particular category, let's say property management, we're interested in potentially engaging your services. We want to see if you're qualified and have the capacity, financial capacity, operational capacity to do what we need you to do. And we say, great, you're now part of this pool. You become a member of the pool, but then the pool then has the next step ability to basically bid on RFPs or jobs within that pool. There's no guarantee just because you make the pool that you actually get work. So we want to make sure that's clear that we do that. Sometimes we have pools because we may enter into work arrangements with groups and we're not satisfied with their work performance, or for whatever reasons they have something that comes up that they can no longer continue doing work. The RFQ helps us to basically have an immediate pivot point to go to the next vendor or another vendor in that group to basically do the work for us. So it just may turn out that for a variety of reasons, you may not be a vendor. We may just turn out by the course of work, we find that one vendor is so much greater than the others. We basically do that. So just want to make sure everybody's clear, we're all on the same page, that an RFQ process is a two-step dance. You get into the pool and then you get the work. The RFP process, you are actually being directly engaged and there are no other competitors against you to do that work. So that kind of takes you through, our needs, our process, kind of the backside, how we do, and that really kind of takes us through. So I knew this would be a slightly shorter than the other ones that we have done. So we're going to move now into the question and answer period. And so we will start pulling up your questions. I know you have some in the chat box, and then we will also deal with the Q&A, and I know Reggie will assist me with the ones in the Q&A. So there's a question here. Who do we send the information to become a vendor? So you can send your information to info@metroatlantalandbank.org. You'll also have, and that basically is circulated to the team. If you feel that you want to send something to one of us directly, you can do that also. Just reach out to us and we'll give you our individual emails. But that can basically, we'll know the information will get to Land Bank. My email is going to be included on this presentation at the backside. So thank you, Reggie, for popping that in there. So I think that's actually the only question in the chat box. So I am going to move to Q&A. As a corporate entity, is Metro Atlanta Land Bank a 501c Corp? We have 501c designation. We are a nonprofit organization, and so we are considered a nonprofit quasi-governmental authority under the statutory statute of Georgia. You asked a question, who would you email to become a vendor? We just asked that in the chat box. And we mentioned that again. And so that has been put into the chat. And so we have, just make sure, and that's also on our website. So feel free to go to the website, and that email address will be there as well if you want to contact us and submit your information. Do you have information on how to engage your organization for developers? Sure. So this webinar is really focused on just vendors. So developers, we did a webinar actually on that before. So Dana Bakari, I would say go to the website and look under how do you acquire property and how do you do work with vendors. Look at that webinar, see if that answers your question. If you still need additional information, please reach out to the staff, and we'd be happy to help you walk through any additional information you might need. Does the land bank cut down trees and shrubbery on vacant lots as well? So we, depending upon how we hold property, we do maintain property, so we will cut back shrubs, and we will cut down trees in accordance with all the rules and regulations of the city of Atlanta, in accordance with the arborist, and in accordance with other types of things that need to be cut down. If we're holding property on our accord, we will follow what we consider to be the best for that lot. If we're holding property on behalf of one of our partners under the Land Banking Depository Program, and they have development goals for those properties, we will work in conjunction with them to basically maintain the type of greenery and shrubbery and trees on that lot that basically comply with what they want to do. But we will also do that cutting to basically make sure we are in accordance with code. So we want to make sure that the grass is cut, overgrowth is trimmed, and things of that nature are taken care of. Can you put the email in the chat? Yes, we have put that in the chat. So I think we have gone through those questions that are in the open box. So I guess, Reggie, you can close those out. Thank you, sir. So let's see, under the chat box, we're going back here. Reggie has, and the great guy that he has put into the chat box the link to our webinar. So again, I urge you to go look at those. Let's see here. Has there been cases where the land bank grants old buildings on land to nonprofits? So even though that is not the purpose of this webinar, I will address that. We do not donate property to any entities. There are, if you go back to our acquisition, there are opportunities for nonprofits and other groups to acquire property from the land bank. The value that basically the compensation that's required will be laid out in regard, and basically based on the type of program that's associated with that type of property. So we often get the call for donations of property, but the land bank does not donate property for no cost basis, okay? And I think that is, and then the last question, again, there's one about list of properties. All of our properties are on our website, so we don't have lists that we point out. If you go to our website, there's a GIS-based list of all properties, and you can look at that 24/7. And you can also click on the links of the properties, and it'll give you additional information about that property. So, so hopefully that answers that question. And I see in the question box, I've already answered the question about the trees and shrubbery, and the chat address has already been put in there. So we do have an additional item that we like to, when we're on these webinars, we want you to do this. And Reggie, you can go ahead and explain this one to the team.
Sure. So if while you're thinking about whether this was helpful for you or not, we want you to answer two questions, and you can simply type your responses in the chat box. The first question we want you to answer is, on a scale of 0 to 10, would you recommend this and other land bank webinars to friends and colleagues, with 0 being no and 10 being absolutely? And then the second question we want you to answer is why. what would be the reason why you chose that number? If you could give us those 2 quick answers before you drop off, then we can make these webinars better for future attendees.
And Reggie, thank you for that.
Questions in the chat box there, Chris?
I think we have answered all the questions. And so for Reggie, you just pointed out, guys, we really do appreciate you guys having given us feedback on this. This is a new series we launched at the beginning of this year. We think that it has been extremely helpful, and we do welcome feedback in terms of how we could be more impactful and more useful. And so please let us know, and that's why we're asking for your responses before you get off. Take you a few seconds to do that for us, and we're going to hold the webinar open to allow you to do that. And so there's still opportunity for you to ask questions if you have any. So we're happy to answer those. So I'm going to look through our chat box and see if there are any questions. So again, please continue to provide information in the scoring. Looking in the Q&A, I don't see any additional questions here. So please just continue to provide your information. And again, if anyone is triggered from this webinar, that you now see that you might be a good partner for the land bank, and based on our service needs and what you bring to the table, again, please provide your information to us via the info@metroatlantalandbank.org, and we'll basically make sure to log that information and follow up with you as necessary. And so to make sure that we basically are as inclusive as possible for folks throughout our community. So I think that's all I have to say, unless there are any additional questions that may come up. Let's see here. Sorry. And please continue to fill it in. One thing about these webinars, these are lunch and learn, so we intentionally try to keep them short. 30 minutes for the presentation, and then just a few minutes afterwards for the Q&A portion. So we do appreciate you taking some time for your day today to join us. We'll continue to try to improve our land bank and make it the premier entity in Georgia and Atlanta and nationally. And so having the right partners really does help in terms of executing that mission. So we do appreciate you guys dialing in and joining us for this. And thanks again to Reggie and Hammond and your crescendo for your support and your coordination. And I don't have any additional questions to answer at this point, Reggie. So I think we're just in the Q&A and the chat response format for part of the program. So
I've come to learn that people always love the gift of time being given back to their schedule. So thank you for that, Chris. And thank you for another great webinar. Thank you for all the participants that joined us for today. And we look forward to having you join for future webinars. Stay tuned to your email box for additional information. Have an amazing day.